Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. Today, you're going to get to hear an interview I did on LinkedIn Live with Chalene Johnson. And I just want to give you a heads up that the audio in this episode is not perfect. We had some connection delays at certain points, but you should be able to hear what she's saying 99% of the time. And if you have questions or you missed a certain part, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to elaborate. But I hope you enjoy this episode. And some of the things we talk about is the importance of niching down in the beginning of your business, the importance of being adaptable when times are tough, how Chalene's scaled her businesses, all sorts of things. And one of the things that we talked about with the niche and messaging is how you want to get clear on that before, broadening out. And so I do want to invite you to check out my free niche marketing and message mastery cheat sheet at haileyrowe.com. It's on my homepage if you just scroll down. And Chalene also has a freebie that we're going to list in the show notes at haileyrowe.com, along with her Insta Club Hub. I am an affiliate for that offering because it is awesome, but you can also check that out in the show notes, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. A long time being one of her marketing impact students back in the day when I first started my business. I went to your social media boot camp a long time ago when you were going in person around the country. And now here you are with Insta Club Hub and continuing to be a mentor to many. Chalene is a motivational speaker. She is a New York Times bestselling author. She's been a fitness celebrity, one of the OGs. She has also been the, I think it's like the number one infomercial world record.
Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah.
So basically, she's been around a while and doing amazing things. So Chalene, we're going to talk business with you today. And my first question for you, because one of the things that you do really well as a personal brand is you bring in your life and what you're going through. And I know one of the things that you've shared is that you've had ADHD. And you claim that that's your superpower. So my question for you is, how have you used your ADHD in your business and in approaching having a personal brand with a lot of different passions without, staying focused, because that might be something that you've struggled with in the past.
Oh, for sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Hailey. Super exciting to be here. And I love this full circle moment. That's super cool. Thanks for sending photos for me from 15 years ago. That was fun. You haven't aged a bit. But to answer your question. So ADHD is a superpower in some regards, and in other regards, it's just really challenging, in terms of the focus. Sometimes that is very difficult, especially when it's something I'm not interested in, but I have to do it. Where it's a superpower is when I am obsessed with something, I can't be stopped. I don't sleep, I don't eat, I go all the way in. It benefits me in terms of my research, the way that I'll just explore every single nuance and detail and the little tiny things that catch my attention that I think make a difference. And I think people who don't have a neurodivergent brain, they miss those things. So sometimes it's a real benefit. I try to focus on the things that are a benefit of this type of brain, but there's lots of things that make it challenging too.
Sure. What are some things that have been challenging for you?
Again, just to be completely transparent, it's hard to make myself do something that my brain says, you're not going to get any dopamine from this. Even I have a team that helps me keep on track. So I have a daily to-do list. And I would say for probably 14 days, I had an item on my to-do list. This is a true story, that is going to make me money, is going to make everybody on the team happy, won't even take me much time to do it. And I know I need to do it. But every time I looked at that thing on my list, I'm like, it doesn't sound fun. I'm not going to do it. And I just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I know I'm pissing people off. And I know I am my own obstacle. And I just have to rein myself in sometimes and just be aware, you keep skipping this. and it's getting bigger in your head. It's getting uglier and more boring in your head. Just freaking do it. And it's crazy. I mean, it took me like 30 minutes to get it done, and it held space in my brain for like 2 weeks unnecessarily. So that's where it becomes a challenge.
Sure, definitely. And speaking of challenges, where I know that you've had a lot of different things throughout the years that you've sold or represented. And I'm curious if you've had a business idea that you thought was really great and maybe you went ahead with, but maybe didn't turn out so great and maybe it was a bust. How did you pivot? Maybe what's an example of that? Tell us more.
Yeah. All the time. So sometimes it is an idea within an existing business. That happens every day. Every day or at least every week, there's something that we're like, this is gonna be really exciting. Customers are gonna love this, and they don't. Or people are gonna really resonate with this YouTube subject, and they don't. And so that I'm always pivoting and adjusting and not trying to take it personal, but also really examining it. Like, what is it? Why? Because if I thought this was really going to work and it didn't, I'm in touch with my girl. So why didn't it work? And really exploring that and asking for honest feedback from people who will give it to you. That's sometimes hard when you're the boss. And really not taking it personal, but going like, okay, how can I tweak this? Businesses that we've started. Yeah, I mean, there have been businesses that once when we first started them, it just didn't exactly know what it wanted to be. An example of that is a business we called at the time we called it 131 or the 131 method, and it just took probably 5 years and I don't know over $1 million of testing and trial and being close, but not exactly what I wanted it to be and not exactly what the consumer needed. Today, that business is called Phase It Up, and it's a business specifically designed to help women who are trying to figure out their hormones in this middle life stage, whether it's perimenopause or menopause, and trying to help them understand fitness and health and nutrition and find honest answers and make it simple. But when that business first launched, I was just basing it on my own personal experience and what I wanted. And I didn't want to give customers what they wanted because I was like, I know better for you. So an example of that would be routinely, I mean, like overwhelmingly, people kept saying, we want meal plans. And I was like, but you're smart enough. If I give you all the information, then you don't have to become reliant on somebody for a meal plan. Like, you're smart enough. Let me show you. Let me teach you everything you need to know about your nutrition so you can design your own meal plan. And I battled our customers on this for like 5 years. And finally, my team was just like, they just want you to make it. They just want it easy. Like, just give people meal plans. I'm like, all right, fine. It's like you can teach a man to fish or you can give him fish. And I felt like we were teaching them to fish. And at a certain point, you just really have to listen to what your customers say they want. So those are 2 examples. A third example would be the push journal. And that's something we're kind of like in the process of right now. And that is slowly phasing out that business or figuring out if we want to sell it. And it's not that business hasn't been a success. For me, it's about attention. And there's only so many hours in the day and only so many businesses that I can give my full attention. And we have on a regular basis, like quarterly, look at our profit centers and which things take me the most time. And I don't want to work that hard. I want to work smart. And I want the things that I'm doing to give us the greatest return on investment so that I've got more free time. And that's a business that thus far is one of the less profitable business centers.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it sounds like one of the things that you're sharing is that famous quote, like market what people want and then give them what they need. So maybe with the Phase It Up, you're going to give them, more meal plans and you're simplifying it. But maybe that opens the door once they're in the program to more like the things that you want to teach them about hormone
That's
health,
right.
things like that.
Yeah. It's kind of like parenting. You have to almost, I don't want to say manipulate your kids, but it's hard to get them to eat broccoli if you're just serving them steamed broccoli. You might have to start
Right.
off with broccoli that's drenched in cheese. And
Yep.
eventually you change their palate.
I like that. I like that example. So as someone who does have a lot of different offerings, you do have the Push Journal, you do have Marketing Impact Academy, you do have Insta Club Hub.
how do you like not confuse your audience and tie it all together as a personal brand?
Well, first of all, I've been doing this for 100 years. So each brand has evolved from a personal problem, and my audience comes along for the ride with me. So if it's a cold audience, someone who's tuning into me for the first time, and I'm talking about something that they relate to, I'm probably going to be talking about that for a considerable amount of time. Like, so for example, at the moment on my Instagram, I'm very niched towards health and fitness and wellness for the woman who's in midlife. And so all of the content that I'm producing relates to that. And in some way, every single brand that I have either built or sold, the through line is, this is something I struggled with and I figured it out, and maybe this solution will work for you too. So if someone kind of relates to the way that I teach, the way that my brain works, my age, or whatever it is, it's very likely that one of those offshoots of those brands or one of those related brands is going to make sense for them as well. But that I really want this point to be really clear, is you have to earn permission to do that. And by that, I mean, you first have to be known for one thing. So when you start your business, when you're trying to build your personal brand, the way to set yourself apart is to niche from the start. Like, you have to just pick one. If in the beginning, when I first started building my brand, I talked about everything that I talk about today, I wouldn't have gotten any traction. I had to spend many years just on social, just talking about fitness, until I had the credibility to say, okay, so now for those of you who are in health and fitness and you want to build a brand like mine, let me now share with you some of the things I did in terms of marketing and business that you can do. But you have to earn that right with your audience. I shouldn't say right. You want to reach a certain level of notoriety for one thing first before you go off into all the other things that I know are probably things you are excited about or passionate about or even have the expertise to share.
Yeah, definitely. So starting with something very niche and then being able to expand. And one of the other things I think that you do is you are really good at leading with your values or kind of themes. Like, so even though you have a lot of different offerings, they all kind of fit under one of your like 3 core themes that you talk about and believe in. So like family is very important to you. And so having something related to that wouldn't be shocking, right?
Right.
So I think that's important as well. But if somebody has established a very niche message and they have built the audience and now they're like, okay, I've earned the right to maybe transition or expand, how do they go about that transition with their existing following? Because I know one thing I hear is like, oh, I'm scared, like if I'm going to add this new thing, that all these current people who liked me for this specific topic and product are going to leave or be confused or,
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse them, that kind of thing.
Okay, so it's a nuanced answer. It's different for each person. So it depends on how wildly different this new direction is. If it's very similar, if it fits within the same kind of realm of the themes that you've been talking about, well, then it's just a slow introduction, so that people are like, oh, okay, this doesn't feel like it's coming out of left field. If, however, you're someone who has always talked about chiropractic care and how to have better posture and how to alleviate back pain, and people know you as, the posture queen, and now suddenly what you want to talk about is investments, that's going to feel like it's out of left field. So you either start a brand new account, which I don't recommend you do unless you don't have a big account, or you go there slowly, where you're drawing the connection, because there's a reason why, even as a chiropractor who cares about people's posture, et cetera, there's a reason why investing became important to you. So in the beginning, when you start talking about this other realm, this other niche that you're interested in, you've got to make that connection for people so they can see the connection themselves. Like, maybe it's, I realized that the only time I was making money is when I was adjusting people or when I was meeting them in my office. And I realized I just didn't want to work that hard. I love what I do, but at a certain point there's a cap. And I realized then I needed to understand the markets. I needed to understand investing and what that looked like. And so you're always kind of making that branch or helping people understand what that journey looked like so that they can see themselves walking on a similar journey.
Yeah, exactly. I love how you tied that together. So, being able to share your story is also key and something that people will resonate with. And speaking of, one thing that I think you do really well is like being authentic on Instagram specifically. And I feel like Instagram, even if you are authentic and you're creating really good content, lately it's just been tricky to be seen, to
Yeah.
be discovered. So, what do you feel right now is the deal with Instagram and what's working best and favorite ways to grow on Instagram?
Yeah, it is tricky. Instagram is challenging at the moment, and most people are seeing that their views are down considerably, and we don't want to follow new people. So it's very, very challenging to get someone to follow you. It's also very challenging to get people to engage. But the most important metric isn't necessarily the follow or even the like. It is the engagement. It's the conversation. It's this person actually feels seen by you, or they're seeing you and they want to have a conversation with you. And to get people to have that dialogue requires that we stop giving monologues. It needs to be much more conversational. And ways of doing that are simple on stories. I think it's really easy on stories to forget that we're just not a talking head. Like, think of this as a conversation, and you're not the best conversationalist if you're just like doing all the talking and not asking any questions, or pausing and letting people ask you questions and you respond. So it's involving your audience, and this takes time because people aren't used to it. You've got to train your audience. Whenever I give people this advice, they're like, I've been doing it and no one's replying. I'm like, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Give people something that they can't help but give you feedback or give you their opinion. And we all know there are those topics that people are like, oh no, I have to say something. So, start with that. I think in terms of the content that's working right now on Instagram, the overly produced trend stuff is dying. In general, the social media trend is headed towards more realistic, more authentic, less produced, less chopped, less flying in captions. So if you just look at what's working and what isn't in your own feed, and the stuff that feels like someone just set up a camera and it's real, like that's working better on Instagram. It's following the trend of TikTok. TikTok sets the trends on all this stuff, and produced content on TikTok does not work. Like the stuff that we see on Instagram, like for example, this podcast being repurposed with captions over it, it won't go anywhere on TikTok. And so it needs to feel less chopped up, less produced, less sent off to somebody else. Like people really want to feel like, okay, I just got a snippet of a conversation between two women versus, chopped up highlights. We want real. We want to see the mistakes. We want to hear the pause. And that's starting to catch on Instagram. Instagram still likes things to be pretty produced. But if you watch TikTok, it's like we're literally seeing people go and hit record. We're hearing the long pause. The content's getting longer and longer and longer and less produced. And I think that if we just watch TikTok, we're going to have a sense of like what's going to happen on YouTube Shorts, what's going to happen on Instagram.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've had people tell me before, because I go on social media very imperfectly, and I've heard them say, oh, like you gave me more confidence to do that live because you're not perfect, or you mess up sometimes in your videos. Yeah. I'm like, well, if that's what it takes, then great. So tell me a little bit about too with hashtags. I know in the past there used to be like, oh yeah, you can use hashtags on your post and be discovered, blah, blah, blah. What's the deal with hashtags today? Are they still relevant? Do they still work for visibility? Okay,
so here's how hashtags work. They're not necessary, but they're not hurtful either. So if they're not hurtful, I would say use them. That's my take, if I have time. So if you look through my post, you're going to be like, she said use them and she doesn't use them. Yeah, because she's lazy. But when I have enough time, I use them. And here's why. Here's why you don't need to use them first if you're being lazy. Instagram is listening to every single word. Obviously, we can get a transcript of what we're saying. If people have captions turned on, it's just automatic. So it knows the subject of your video and it knows what people want to see it. So it's automatic, even if it's not a video, even if it's just a photo, it scans everything in the photo, and AI is so advanced, it knows who wants to see this type of content and what exactly is in the photo, everything. So it's going to do its job. However, if there's something very specific that you want to show up for, because sometimes AI gets it wrong, right? Like, say, for example, I'm doing a video, I'm posting a video on Instagram Reels of me working out, and I'm talking about strength training. But the woman I want to see this is a woman over 50 or a woman who's in menopause. But I didn't say that, and you're not seeing that in the video. Then I might use the hashtag menopausal muscle or women who lift over 50, so that if someone is searching that hashtag, I show up in their feed. And I know that Instagram is playing with this again, because recently we got insight that they are feeding, and they will intermittently in the United States right now put in your feed hashtags that you followed or interacted with in the past. So it might not, what you're seeing in your feed might not be content from someone you already follow, but a hashtag, a content that relates to a hashtag that you followed or looked at in the past. So I just don't think it hurts. So if you've got the time, use it.
All right. Yes. And what about, are you on Threads now? Are you utilizing
No,
Not
not at all. Now, you say, I mean, I did for a minute when it first came out, and I'm of the mindset there are enough people on just like even one platform. So whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube or Instagram stories or TikTok, like you don't have to be everywhere. And when we try to be everywhere, especially when we don't have a team, you're going to show up nowhere all the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I like getting on an app and just knowing it like I'm married to it. Like I want to know every single nuance. And I feel that way about Instagram before I moved on to TikTok. And then once I really felt like I know TikTok well enough to just kind of stay up to date without having to be in it every single day to understand all the nuances, then I went back to YouTube long form. And I did that for about a year and a half before I started, just literally 2 weeks ago, dipping my toe into YouTube Shorts. But I don't think the right thing to do for our mental health is to try to do all these things at once. I think we have to put on blinders. And when people say like, oh, are you doing blah, blah, blah? Are you doing blah, blah, blah? I'm just like, la, 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 la. Like, I don't want to hear it because it's a distraction. I've got that disease where that will grab my focus. And I just have to remind myself, like, one thing at a time.
Yeah. There's a season maybe where you can add it, but focusing is where it's at. And now that you have built a team and you do have things that, seem to be scalable, I'm curious, how have you been, any tips around like being able to do that without losing the personal touch or the personalization that a lot of people are scared to lose when they bring on team and start scaling?
The key is bringing on the right team. That's number one. Number two is bringing team members on one at a time, and the ones that really are going to be a representative of your voice or of your brand, or they're going to be the person who is making sure that it looks and sounds and feels exactly the way you envisioned it. Those people, when you bring them on, you have to spend a lot of time with them, where I'm working and showing them, like, so I will literally, anything that I'm going to outsource to them, I just do a screen record while I'm doing it on my laptop, and I'll use QuickTime and I'll record myself, and they'll hear why I changed the color of this font and why I would never use this word and why I think this word is cheesy and why I do the ... And like, so they hear, not just, they don't just see what I'm doing, they understand why I do that, so that I can train them to think like me. And then they take a shot at it, and then I correct it. And you've got to just be patient and go back and forth until it feels like really, really good. And then you still have to come in and tweak from time to time, but it requires patience, a lot of patience and time. The more time you devote to onboarding someone, helping them become part of the culture and understand your vision, the more things are going to look and sound like you. I mean, there are so many times where I'll read email copy and I'm like, did I write that? Did I write that or did Jamaica write that? Like literally, I want to get to that stage where I can't tell who wrote it.
Yeah. All right, you froze for me, but you're back. Okay. So yeah, being able to invest in them and teach them to think like you, not just giving them, oh, here's what I change.
Right.
And when you guys, as a team, let's say the economy's not going well, or we're in a time where things aren't just a linear path to growth. What do you find keeps you and your team going during harder times and maybe when buyer hesitancy is higher? What do you do in these periods to either adjust or keep going?
Yeah, we're really innovative. Everyone on our team has a voice, and that's fun. It doesn't matter what department they're in. So we will often do big meetings. We're doing one in person. Usually they're on Zoom, but like most of our team is remote. Sorry, everybody's remote. 45 team members are all remote, but we do come together, and we're going to do that in like 2 weeks. And when we do that, we invite like everyone, no matter what role they play on our team, because we hire people who are just like our customers, because that makes everything better, right? Like, so they're the right demographic, they have the same kind of mindset, and that person who does customer service actually is hearing from the customer all the time. They might have some really great ideas around pricing, or they're hearing what language they're using. So it's about being innovative, being creative, letting everyone have a voice, looking at what is working, listening to your customers, knowing that whether it's a recession or an economic downturn, these things are going to happen. But when that happens, it just means people are still going to need to do business. People are still going to need to buy. There's still going to be a demand, but the consumer is going to become more particular. So you have to figure out, how can we serve that customer? What is it that they need in this moment? How can we stand out? How can we be better than everybody else? An example of this is Instagram right now. I think Instagram has become so overwhelmingly complicated and frustrating for customers that we're finding that all the other, not all, but a lot of Instagram coaches and Instagram programs and courses, they're folding. And so for us, that's like an opportunity to figure out, like, okay, so those businesses, why are they closing their doors? Why are they going out of business? And how can we serve those customers who still need insight? What were they doing wrong? What can we do better? And it's an opportunity for us to stand out. So it's regardless of the business, it's like, okay, how can we innovate?
Yeah. And I think one strength you have is seeing everything as an opportunity in your life. Like even when you're going through things, you share it with your audience and you support them through it and use it as a way to help people. So one weird question for you that I kind of want to know is,
okay,
where were you in your life? Like what was going on when you were 30? And nowadays, what do you think has changed in the most for you in business and how you approach business since then?
Wow, 30. Okay, so at 30, I was in an old school entrepreneur's mindset. I'd been raised by an old school entrepreneur who, I was taught that you save money by learning how to do everything yourself. Like my dad he would make the ads, he would sweep the floor, he would buy the merchandise, he would work the register, he did no matter what the business was, he learned how to do all the things. And for me, when I was 30, thinking like, okay, we're, a young couple with a little baby, and this business isn't making us a lot of money right now. So therefore, I'm going to learn to do everything myself. At the time, we had a fitness business that was similar to Jazzercise called Powder Blue Productions. And we were producing programs that came out monthly for our instructors. And they got at the time, a VHS and a cassette. I thought it saved us money. Instead of sending those things out to be replicated, I bought machines that were in a separate bedroom, like a tower of machines to duplicate all of these VHSs and to replicate all of these cassette tapes, because I thought that would save us money. But in the long run, everything, I mean, that's just like one small example. I did everything myself, and we were never going to make more money. And I was going to kill myself in terms of stress, because there was no time to be a parent. There was no time for us. And I just had to realize, like, slowly, each person, one at a time, even one person part-time, when I brought them on, my life got better and our business made more money. Okay, now let's bring them in. Let's get that same person working full-time, making more money, better life. Okay, now let's bring on the next person, making more money, better life. And so the more I learned to let go, and the better I got at hiring and realizing that there's very few things that only I can do. And there's still some things that only I can do. I know that. But almost everything else, there's someone out there who can do it like a trillion times better. And life is too short.
Yeah, I would say that is something every entrepreneur probably will approach at some point, because we just can't do everything all the time.
Yeah.
And you have been traveling this summer, and it seems like you're in a wonderful place in your business and your life where you're making room for things like that. And I would love to know, what are you most excited about going forward? And also, separate question, what was your favorite travel moment this summer that we could all learn from?
Gosh. So the travel is remarkable. It's just something that we put off. I shouldn't say we put off. We didn't prioritize it when our kids were little. They're in all the sports and all the things, and there's just like only so much you can do. And we wanted to have something in the season of life when they left that we could really, really look forward to that we hadn't done. And that was traveling. And so when we became empty nesters, I hear so many people, they're like, I don't know what my life is now. I don't know who I am. And for us, we were so excited for them to fly the coop because we had such big plans. So I encourage people to like make plans for the next season. That's would be my number one takeaway. It doesn't even matter where you go, just to make plans to explore or do something really fun and exciting that you're not doing now. And we still work when we do this. We this year we spent 2 months in Europe and the UK. Next year, we're talking about maybe doing 3. And we just love experiencing other people's cultures and just seeing things we've never seen before. But because our team is remote, it really doesn't impact the way that we work. I think if anything, my one thing I wish I'd done a little differently this year is I wish I had produced in advance some more content. Because there are some times where I was like, oh man, I don't really want to stay in today and film a YouTube video, but I need to,
Yep, been there. Okay. And one last question, and then we'll talk more about Insta Club Hub and where people can connect with you and all that good stuff. What's been some of your best either business investments this year, or books, or just favorite business things this year?
Business things this year. I do think it's really important to invest in the experts. To track back to your question about being 30, and the biggest mistake, in my opinion, I see a younger generation making right now is they're like, I can figure this out. I'll find a YouTube video. I'll get a podcast. I'm going to figure this out. And while I think you can do that to some extent, I think it's just quicker, and there's less error when you go directly to the expert who's done it, who knows all the ins and the outs. And like when I was coming up, like it was really hard to find someone who would mentor you. Like no one would mentor you, and like online courses were not even a thing, and so today, to think you don't have to like meet somebody and ask them to be your mentor. You can just invest. And when you invest in someone who's teaching you how to do something, they have a vested interest to make sure you're successful. So they're going to give you every single piece in the right order. And it's just such a time saver. I think there's a real saturation of that market too. So that means you as a consumer, the entrepreneur who wants to learn something from the expert, you've got more than one expert that you can choose from. So choose wisely. Do your research, make sure there's a money back guarantee, talk to other people who've been through it, and then keep yourself accountable, because whatever it is you're investing in, it's only as good as your ability to follow through on what you've learned, you know? So that would be my recommendation. I'm learning from experts all the time.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, and we're never done. There's always more things to learn and more experts to learn from. So tell us about Insta Club Hub, and what is that all about?
So Insta Club Hub, it's funny you mentioned when we first started that you had been to one of my social media boot camps, which was what, like 15 years ago?
Long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, maybe even more than that.
It was
That's
not
crazy.
what it is today, social media, at
Yeah.
least at that point.
Oh my God, right? Like we just posted a photo and tried to decide what filter to put on it. Crazy. It was so crazy. So easy. Why can't we go back? And so I used to do this course to teach Instagram, a course. And what happened is when social media just really exploded, Instagram was changing every other month. And so I was always having to update the content. And then people were not realizing that the content had been updated, and they were following the practices that maybe they had learned in the course 2 months earlier, and that was already outdated. And so pretty soon the changes on Instagram started happening weekly. And we realized, like, okay, this keeping up with this course and getting people to go and realize that the course had been updated, that was not working for them or for us. And eventually I realized, okay, we need something that's like every week, like what's the minimum as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as someone who's a personal brand or an influencer, what's the minimum you need to know that's changed on Instagram this week? Because they probably announced 15 different changes this week, but not all of them are relevant. There's only a couple that matter to us. And so we created a membership where it's like get in, get out. There's basics in there. So when people join the membership, they log in and they go through an assessment to figure out, like, what do you know? Right? Because even someone who's been on Instagram a long time, they might have been on Instagram a long time, but they don't know how to use a lot of the features. Like everyone's at a different stage. So the first thing we do is kind of bring everybody up to the same place. And then it's just once a week, an email letting people know, like, here's what you need to know. And here's what matters to you as the entrepreneur. And here's a quick 3-minute lesson that breaks us down. And so we really are just serving people who are trying to grow their business or their brand on Instagram. It's very, very niched to growth on Instagram. So we don't teach email marketing in it. We don't teach lead generation. Well, a little bit, but we're not teaching you like how to connect things to your email list or what to do with that group or, all the kind of heavy things that come later in business. We're just solely focused on, hey, you don't need to worry about how to figure out. We got you when it comes to figuring out Instagram. Let us show you like what's working right now. And because we have tens of thousands of members, we don't have to rely on what someone's saying on YouTube, an expert, or rely on what's working for us. We literally pull our audience. And we've got an incredible team at Insta Club Hub, including a PhD in Instagram. Did you even know there was such a thing?
I did not. That is
yeah. We have a doctorate of Instagram who's on our team, and she just looks at the numbers and the studies and what's happening in the algorithms and breaks all of that down for our people and just, kind of try to simplify things. My goal, and this is a company I founded with my son, Brock. He's now the CEO of Insta Club Hub. So I've been able to kind of take a step back. But our goal is, just like any through line in my business is, I was struggling with, like, I don't want to spend this much time on Instagram. How can I get the same result, but spend less time there? And that's what we strive to do for our members.
I love it. And anything you're most excited about now that you've, come back from your travels and you're working on a lot of different things, anything that's most exciting to you right now in your life or in your business?
Whatever I'm going through, I can't help but like be excited about it, even when sometimes other people aren't. So when we were traveling, I decided to take a break from alcohol. And just like 7 days, we were going to London to see some friends. And I woke up one morning, I drank too much the night before. My face looked all puffy. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? I look terrible. And I said to Brett, like, we're not drinking for the next week. He's like, okay. And, but we're going out to these nice dinners and we're in Europe where like the wine, the champagne, but we took 7 days off. And then I was like, we should do 10 days. And then I was like, we should do 21 days. We should do the month. And I just kept going. And I feel, and I mean, we're still, still going with this. And then I just have discovered things that I didn't want to look at with regard to the research on alcohol and why people don't want to hear about that, why I didn't want to hear about it, why I was intentionally avoiding the subject, and just really approaching that and realizing that if I am authentically and truly a health influencer, then I know people are looking at me, and they're looking at me for things that help them to live longer and to live powerfully and that improve your life. And alcohol doesn't fit at all. So, yeah, I'm excited to help people drink less. If you want to quit, great. But I think that there aren't very many people having a conversation about drinking less,
Yeah.
right? But
Mhm.
drinking less is way better than drinking more.
Mhm.
And if that's where we start so that people don't tune out the conversation, because I know I was tuning out that conversation. Whenever I heard people talk about like a sober challenge or abstaining, I was like, la, 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 la. Like, I don't want to hear it, So I know that there's people who don't want to hear that because anytime I post about it, I get unfollows, more so than any other topic. And I get it because I was that person too. So I really want people to know that, just consider drinking less. And I'm helping people right now to do that with a new challenge that starts in October.
Very cool. Well, I don't drink, and I've never really been a
Amazing.
drinker. Yeah, I've just like
You never have drank, Hailey?
I've a tiny bit, but I've never wanted to want it or like have more of it. And so I was just like, this is an easy choice for me. I don't like the taste. I just didn't have a like desire. And so
Yeah.
I just was like, all right, I'm just not going to drink. And it's been an interesting journey. I mean, I was in the sorority. I'd done all the things where you would think I would be a drinker and all that. I've sing in a wedding band and have been in bands for a long time. So I'm in a lot of environments where it's like drinking is a thing. But yeah, it's just been a choice and I'm just sticking to it. So,
and do people ever make you feel weird about that choice? And how often?
not really anymore. I've been very just like shut it down. Like, oh, I just don't drink. And that's it. now people just know I don't. So it becomes just a part of like, oh, we don't offer her drink because she doesn't drink.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I haven't had too many challenges with that. And I've also had a really nice group of friends that are pretty open-minded, thankfully.
Yeah.
So and I hang out with a lot of like high performer, when I've been in groups and stuff like that, I try to find people like that, and used to work in the health world where people were very health conscious and stuff. So it's been all over the place, but I would say for the most part, it's been a pretty easy thing.
So that was a confusing piece for me. It's something that I used to justify that it was okay to drink champagne because people who were older than me or had been in this industry longer than me, more reputable in the health industry, were also drinking champagnes and imported wine. So I was like, oh, okay, so then this is okay,
It's
and
a thing to do.
yeah, and that, just the more I looked at the research, I'm like, but wait, this has nothing to do with health. Zero. Like, it's the opposite. I increase my risk of cancer, dementia. It destroys or at least damages every cell in your body. Like, what does this have? This is like the opposite. But man, have we been conditioned to believe it's just okay.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So interesting conversation.
Yes. Well, Chalene, thank you so much for spending time with me today. And I would love to know where people can connect with you, and if they do want to do the alcohol challenge, where they can find that. We'll put all that.
So for those who are looking to grow their brand on Instagram, they can go to instaclubhub.com/brand. We can help you figure out your niche. That's a free download that helps someone who's like trying to figure out how to grow. Like, what does my brand look like on Instagram? Like, how do I get people to follow me? So that's a free download. If you want to do the challenge, we start October 1st, and that is at phaseitup.com/drink less.
All right. Amazing. And you're on Instagram at Chalene Johnson.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.